Thank you. I'm so honored and excited to be here today. I want to thank you all for being here. I believe at the core of my being that educators are today's most important leaders. All of you, whether you're teachers or students or thinkers, innovators, administrators, you are showing children that they are valuable, that their lives have meaning, and that they can create a better tomorrow. Education is the single greatest force to unleash our combined human potential. So thank you for the joy that you bring, for the faith that you give, and for the way that you are uplifting our combined destiny. I would not be here today if my parents had not made the decision to put me in one of Pakistan's better schools. They came from humble origins. My father was orphaned when he was 9 years old, and my mother was married before she had the chance to go to college. So they worked hard, and they decided that they would give me and my siblings the best education that the country had to offer. I was very lucky compared to millions of girls, many of whom lived not far from me, who never had the chance to go to school. And while this opportunity opened doors for me, I always had a very complicated relationship with the education sector. I was mostly bored at school. I felt constrained and uninspired. Fortunately, I figured out how to make it work. In Pakistan, the only thing that mattered was passing your annual exams. So I would skip school, not do my homework, and then study very hard before the exams. It made my teachers very, very angry. But I wasn't trying to be rebellious. School just didn't engage me. It never gave me the answers that I was looking for. It felt vacuous, and it force-fed me ideas that didn't make sense. A distorted version of the history of Pakistan, a limited understanding of culture and religions. I often did not want to know what they were teaching me. Instead, I wanted to know the answer to this. Why this girl, who is 7 years old, in a community that had been flooded in Pakistan, had to walk 1 mile every day to get water. And I wanted to understand why these people, the Taliban and other extremist groups, thought it was okay to publicly beat women. There was a growing sense of tragedy around me. My country was crumbling. There was extreme poverty, severe imbalance of wealth, a growing mindset of religious extremism and intolerance, and education was doing nothing to combat that. In fact, in many ways, it was contributing to the radicalization of society. So that's how I spent the time that I was not at school, volunteering in women's prisons, where children were born to mothers and never left because there was no one outside waiting for them. I understood there what it meant to be a child who was discarded before he or she was even born. And I understood there the roots of hatred. Or volunteering in an earthquake relief camp, where I was the only female volunteer, hiding away in the tents with other girls and women who weren't allowed to go outside because their brothers and fathers did not want them to. I understood then what it meant to be a woman in the hardest circumstances in the world and to feel that your very existence was a source of shame. What I learned in these situations was never taught to me in school, is never taught to most children in school. But my experiences in these situations were the greatest source of learning for me. They were transformative. When I was 18 years old, I got a scholarship to go to Stanford University. That opened up so many doors. I felt a lot less crazy in the presence of other dreamers. And I thought about trying careers that I never even knew had existed. That's also where I found Malala. I was a sophomore in Stanford, and things were getting worse and worse in Pakistan every day. There were growing suicide attacks, bombings, insecurity. And one day, I saw a video about a girl, 11 years old. She was speaking out and saying that the Taliban were not letting her go to school. She said, "Help me, save my school, save my Swat Valley." I felt deeply accountable to this child, and I decided I had to help. So that summer, I went home with a plan. I would arrange a summer camp, and I would bring to that summer camp Malala and other girls like her. And I would help to empower them to be more effective advocates for their community, training them, introducing them to people who could help, giving them ideas, showing them how technology worked. Their spirit left me completely awestruck. They had so much force, and all they needed was a chance. The summer camp was very successful. The girls went back, and later on, the military intervened. Schools reopened. Malala got to go back to school, and I stayed closely involved. I graduated from Stanford 2 years later, and I joined business consulting with McKinsey & Company in Dubai. I was hoping to do education consulting work in the Middle East. About a year into my job, I had just landed in Egypt when I got a text message on my phone, and it said, Malala has been shot. I still remember how distraught I felt at that moment. She had been shot by the Taliban on her way home from school. They had stopped her school bus, asked who is Malala, and then shot her in the head. She was critical. I called up my mother at that moment and said, you need to be there. And so over the next couple of days, as Malala hung on for her life, I got many offers for help from people in the US, people in the UK, people like Gabby Gifford-Surgeon who wanted to fly in. The whole world was shocked to know the truth that in the 21st century, a 16-year-old girl could be shot in the head for wanting to go to school. The day that Malala was flown to Birmingham and her family flew in, I flew in as well to be there to help her recover. But I wasn't the only one who was so deeply distraught at Malala's shooting. All over the world, people were questioning how this could happen. And all over the world, girls from Afghanistan to LA were standing up and saying, I am Malala. I too am suffering. I too have a battle. And I too will not be silenced. I knew that there was an opportunity to take what I had known was a huge crisis in education, particularly for girls, and to create a movement. Malala was awake. She had recovered. She had suffered no brain damage. It was the greatest miracle that I had ever seen. And she said, I want to help other girls. I knew that her campaign was going to grow and that she needed someone by her side. So I made the decision to stay. And over the last year and a half, have been working with her to build her advocacy movement, including how she raises her voice to bring attention to issues of girls' education, helping her get her book together, and then launching the Malala Fund. The last year for me has been a culmination of many things that I have learned through my own experiences and through my interactions with others. And I'd love to share them with you as a community of leaders working to create a better world where everyone has an education and the education is meaningful. The first is that access is a huge issue. We don't realize it from far away, but there are millions of children who are not in school, and that's not acceptable. The cost of educating these children is not prohibitive, and yet we are losing generations every day. The global community needs to recognize that this is a crisis, that this is an emergency, and all that needs to shift is that this needs to be a priority. Over 100 million children, 66 million of those girls, are being lost as we speak. A number of things are changing in the world that open us up to innovative ways to solve this issue. And when I say innovation, I don't just mean technology. Yes, technology is opening up new ways of doing things at lower cost. We can provide high-quality content on low-cost tablets to the most remote areas. We can get data on how students learn at their best. But there is also grassroots innovation. Entrepreneurs in the most far-flung areas of the world are struggling and fighting to come up with effective ways to educate students. Malala's father was one such entrepreneur, In the Swat Valley, when all other schools shut down, he fought to keep his school open. He encouraged his daughter to blog anonymously on the BBC to tell the world when no journalist was speaking out about what was happening in the Swat Valley. We need to find, uplift, and support grassroots entrepreneurs and cultivate a cadre of leaders globally who can be advocates for this movement. And innovation is not just about access. It's also about rethinking what we mean by school and learning. There's a number of solutions out there that we know work, but we refuse to embrace. Cash stipends for children who are in poverty have long been shown to be one of the most effective ways to keep the poorest children in school. And the cost of them is much lower than the cost of having these children drop out. And yet they're not embraced as widely as they should be. The list goes on. But the need to think about solutions innovatively, whether from a tech or from a grassroots innovation perspective, is critical. Third, as much as we're all excited by innovation and new ideas, the fact of the matter is we need to reform systems as well. Governments, multilateral institutions have the money, access, and resources to solve this problem. And as difficult as it is to engage with the largest bureaucracies, unless we push systems, this will not be solved. And that means entrepreneurs, innovators, leaders, thinkers, teachers, and governments collaborating and conversing. The cross-functional nature of this solution is crucial to solving it effectively. Fourth, girls matter. It's long been shown that girls are the most effective way to develop a country rapidly. For every dollar that a girl earns, 90% of that she invests back into her family, compared with 30 to 40% for each man. If you can educate a girl and keep her in school through adolescence, you delay her marriage, you delay her childbirth, and you give her the chance to earn an income. This is the one shot that we have to prevent another generation from falling into poverty and to make sure that these girls are marrying when they are ready, having children who are healthy and educated and actually earning an income. And lastly, education has to be inspiring. And this is something that applies across the developed and the developing world. Education is about nurturing creativity. We are hurting children by teaching them that their intelligence is only measured by how well they perform in standardized tests. Many brilliant children think they are not smart because they are judged against a particular view of the mind. Imagination is more important than knowledge. An education that focuses on a narrow idea of learning is stripping away our creativity, curiosity, and self-confidence. To me, this is the most exciting innovation of our time, the evolutionary challenge of today. How can we inspire the very best in our children and help them see the best in themselves?